Everybody, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm Peter White, the Managing Director of the FBAA. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about VOI, Verification of Identification, with good friend of mine, Martin, who is the Managing Director and founder of National Crime Check, who have been working with the FBAA for quite some time in providing police reports. Well, today we're talking about a new product of theirs they're launching called InstaID Plus. This is a new product coming into the marketplace to enable you to do verification of people at the high standard. Now, this is the gold standard of best practice of doing VOI. And I can tell you now, over the last couple of weeks, I used it because my security pass to get into Parliament House, Canberra, was coming up for renewal. Not that I can use it that much at the moment. We'll move on from that. I had to go through the process, and I used this system, and it was brilliant. Now, I know Martin and his team are working with the banks to onboard this through them. So this is, I guess, an early look-see as what this best practice model looks like. And it's important we understand it because as we're now moving so much into a digital era, the risk of fraud and potentially identity theft, it becomes greater and greater. So we need to make sure we're acting in a best practice mannerism when we're looking at people's ID and ensuring that nothing's slipping through the gaps, because sure as eggs, if something goes wrong, we're going to be held accountable for it, and that's just not on. So I'd like to welcome Martin, and what will happen is that we've had a little technical problem just up this morning with Martin's camera, so you're not going to be able to see Martin, unfortunately. You have to put up with my ugly mug, but I will drop away in a sec whilst Martin's presenting, and he'll go through the slides with you and talk that through. Then I'll come back on anyhow, and Martin and I will do a bit of Q&A. So we've got a few questions here to go through, and if you've got any questions whilst the presentation's happening, use the chat box. It's in the right-hand corner of your screen. Send the messages through and we'll answer your questions in addition to the ones you've already got once we finish this presentation. Alrighty, well, Martin, I'm going to hand it over to you, mate, and I will come back once you finish this piece and we'll go into the Q&A. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning, everybody. As you guys are aware, and as Peter introduced me into today's session, NCC has been working with the FBAA for now around about 5 years, and some of you, if not hopefully many of you, have used our system in one way, shape or form for the police check side of things. And just to give you a bit of an insight into who we are and you know where we've sort of come from. So just a bit of background information. So we've been established since 2009, and we've been in the identity verification space for over 10 years, particularly within the background screening vertical that includes police checks, entitlement to work checks, and some bankruptcy checks that we do for primarily employment onboarding, as well as other forms of onboarding. We have a big presence within the gig economy space and other platforms, and now it's obviously becoming quite a broad-based marketplace in that space. And you know, over those years, we've really seen significant changes in the way identity verification has progressed. I mean, when we first started out, we were talking about forms that needed to be sent in only by snail mail, and ID that had to be certified as true copies by a notary that, you know, came from a big list. And, you know, we saw it all. We saw people send in their original passports, their original driver's licenses to our office. And, you know, that caused us a lot of grief because we were looking at it going, why would someone do this? But they do it. And we had to obviously send them back through secure registered mail. But we've seen the progression from that because of primarily the risks associated with accurately determining someone's identity was at that time very restricted and very flawed. So back in 2014, we pioneered biometrics in this space, where we undertook biometric facial recognition in a secure online environment. And we've continued building on that initial building block to offer additional verification and screening layers through integrations with things like the document verification system, the Department of Home Affairs, and other online providers in this space to really triangulate and provide some level of assurance, only pretty much for this police check vertical. So now the landscape of identity, looking outside of this vertical, it became quite prevalent to me, because you sort of see what we do from the police check vertical and say, well, listen, proof of identity are in many transactions in everyday life that internally your organizations will grapple with your own businesses. But looking outside of that, you know, applying for a credit card, purchasing a mobile phone plan, police checks as mentioned, you know, inquiries about any form of accounts and interacting with government services all require some form of identity that needs to be verified. And the reason why this hit home, I'll just tell a quick story of this, and particularly in relation to that second bullet point, was last year, actually early last year, I ended up coming home and my wife said to me, how come a Woolworths mobile plan has rocked up to the door? I didn't know you had another mobile phone. And I said, I don't have another mobile phone. She goes, well, here it is. It's your name on it, and you've got a $340 outstanding bill with Woolworths Mobile. Thought, okay, something's a little bit fishy here. So I ended up contacting Woolworths Mobile, and they passed me through to their fraud department, and they said, yep, your name's on it. And they said, but you've got a different delivery address. I said, no. I said, on my driver's license, it's the same delivery address, and this is my house and this is my address details. They go, no, that's not the one we have on file. I said, well, I have a feeling that someone's actually used my ID. Can you explain the process? And they said, yeah, you lodge online and you provide me with your first name, surname, date of birth, your driver's license number, and an address of where you want the mobile to go to. I said, right. I said, that's all on one form of ID. He said, yeah. I said, do you need to provide the physical copy of the ID? No. Do you need to provide any biometric with the ID? No. So me personally, I was thinking, geez, where would I have put my driver's license? Because I had the driver's license in my hand. It's always been in my wallet. I haven't lost my wallet. But every time I set up a tab at the bar of a you know, a pub or a restaurant, when you provide your ID as part of checking in for a hotel, each one of those transactions, actually they take a copy of your ID. So that information is out there, and with that information, due to the current process that they had, made it a growing incidence where fraud could be used. So when we looked at developing our systems, we tried to make sure that we can, wherever possible, mitigate those risks and provide a solution that will enable organizations to be confident and reassured that their processes are robust and are better practice. So as you can see there, the existing verification systems, I explained one case study of where it affected me, but a lot of them are still very much paper-based. A lot of them are still very much prima facie based. So you're just accepting things on face value. And then not to mention the overlaying issues of data privacy. How are those documents transmitted to you? Do you receive them via email, which we all know is an unsecured channel? How do you know that the person sending you that ID is that person? Where are you storing that ID once collected? Is that stored in a secure manner that can't be accessed by either unauthorized parties or God forbid, any form of sophisticated hacking and fraud? So whilst we're grappling with all of those issues, we've also got to be aware and try and strike that eclectic balance of you know, onboarding and administration and making the process as easy as possible for the customer whilst maintaining all of those security requirements. So this slide really just shows you the true breadth of verification of ID that's in this space, that we, with this product that we've launched just recently, that we are starting to uncover opportunities right across the board. That, you know, initially we looked at financial services as a big opportunity in this space, but there's so many other verticals out there, from home, health and family, social, leisure, professional, which is why we're here today, financial services, once again, whilst we're here today, but other areas of day-to-day life and day-to-day business that does take place where verification of identity is required and where there is opportunity to adopt better practice, more online, more secure practices, and overlaying today's uncertain world with COVID, that where these transactions that were primarily face-to-face now become even more challenging due to, obviously, restrictions in seeing face-to-face, restrictions in technology, and also restrictions in terms of verifying and ratifying services, makes it all the more complicated. And we have very, very large institutions right through to small institutions grappling with this idea of how do we do this better? How do we do this more efficiently? How can we achieve the compliance? How can we achieve security while still maintaining, customer take-up, customer throughput, and ease of use? So with all of this in mind, we've developed this product that's in early release that we are calling InstaID Plus. And really, this is the problem that we're trying to solve. So as mentioned to you, identity verification right across all verticals, not just the ones that you guys currently see, is really constrained by face-to-face requirements, paper-based administration, inconsistent application of the process. Now, whether that's inconsistent application that's been provided to you through your compliance channels with various lenders, right through to other supply chain requirements, buyers, sellers, lawyers, brokers, everyone involved, all the stakeholders involved in all these different transactions that you guys touch, all have their own priorities, all have interpretation of various legislation or various best practice or policies, and really it becomes a real administrative mess of different information. What do I do here? What do I do there? What about this transaction? What about that transaction? That what InstaID is trying to do is, one, digitize the VOI process, create a standardized approach across for the whole supply chain, just like we've done with criminal checks, that there is a standardized approach. So we found whenever someone uses NCC, they understand the process, and it is the same process whether they apply for a police check for banking and finance or whether they're going to drive for Uber. It's exactly the same process with exactly the same look and feel. And what that actually does is it builds confidence and trust with the service, that they know what they're getting into, they know what's expected of them, and they are confident and comfortable with that process, right? And we are here to provide distribution support for the very smallest of organizations through one form of technology, which is our portal, to very, very large, very, very high volume transactions, which we have the ability to API integrate with existing workflow solutions that are available within various marketplaces, that we essentially become that back-end fulfillment provider of this one service that may make up one part of the whole service that's being offered to a particular client through a particular business. And we're doing that because we actually have all of the platform, all of the technology, all of the processes, and the end-to-end infrastructure that allows us to do that. And we've been doing that for millions of transactions already via a federally accredited regulator in the ACIC, which is the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. So identity for us is nothing new. It's essentially, we've just carved that whole process out to be able to offer it to more verticals than what we currently offer. So breaking all of that information down, we're really answering three premise questions, right? At the end of the day, this is what our system does for you. Number one, we answer the question, is the person in the session a live person, right? They are real, they are live, it's not a photo, they are living and breathing. Number two, can the person's ID that they provide in that session be verified or ratified against one or more independent verification sources? So what we're saying is that document's data is real and can be validated, right? The third thing we go to prove is the person on the ID, actually physically on that piece of plastic or in that passport, the same person in session? And we use technology to do all of those three things. So that at the end of the day is the underlying value prop of what InstaID is going to give people who require, or businesses who require, identity verification. And that could be from one of the most complicated rule sets available, which is doing police checks, to a simple, all right, we need you to provide one government issued ID. So even in that very simplistic session, that you're still going to get the answers to those 3 questions. That at the end of the day, you're going to get a report that explains all of that, that has the power of technology behind it, that does the facial recognition, right, and provides all the document authentication, and then you can rely upon that information to say, yep, that is valid. NCC or InstaID has confirmed that it's valid, and you can rely upon that information, right? So in terms of just to sort of summarize before I get into sort of what it looks like here, it's important to know InstaID Plus is not just technology. It's not just a bolt-on tech play where, oh, great, that sounds very good, but we actually bolt it and couple it with the existing workflow infrastructure of what NCC is known for, with all those millions of transactions, and provide the two together with customer service at the forefront. So what we've found out there in the marketplace is there's plenty of ID verification providers out there who will just provide you the tech, but they don't. What happens if the customer has problems? What happens if the customer provides the wrong ID? What happens if the customer needs help with their ID? What happens if they've got any questions regarding the rule set? That we don't expect the people who use InstaID to answer those questions. We provide the end-to-end infrastructure. So we have a customer support team via email and phone based in Adelaide who handle all of that, right? So they do it currently for police checks. They'll do it for all types of ID, right? We also have a built-in reloop and redo process to remedy errors, or alternatively, the technology is very smart to be able to offer an alternative ID to meet rule set requirements. So with technology out there that basically are very black and white and go, yep, the ID that's provided, we go through the process, and if it's not right, they off-ramp, and then still the customer is stuck at the end of the day because they don't know what to do, or they've been off-ramped into another manual process. What we're saying is, well, hold on a minute. Why have they messed it up? Right? Have they provided an expired ID? And if so, great. Okay, we'll advise them that they've provided an expired ID, and then they can remedy it by providing a more current version of the ID, or an alternative ID that will still meet the rule set requirements, and they can still continue the onboarding process. So that's a vital part of this piece of technology to enable reloop, to enable reminders, to get more people converted, rather than just giving them a one and done approach of, yep, if you stuff it up, bad luck, we're going to move on. So that's an important part of where we're coupling the technology with the workflows that we have. And as mentioned before, we've got multi-layer verification and validation sources. So with our APIs, with the Home Affairs, the DVS, our international verification systems, and our own proprietary machine learning, we've got a nice layered way to verify a whole stack of IDs, both domestic and international, to create a very, very large catchment for anyone who wants to use this proof of identity service, right? We know that there is technology out there in the current marketplace that is very restrictive, primarily because it only deals with domestic IDs, both Australian passports and driver's licenses. But as we know, we live in a multicultural society, that individuals who want to engage services that need to do proof of identity will have other documentation. And then as a result, we can add value with providing visa details, verifying their passports with the Home Affairs Department, provide that information. So there's a greater level of assurity when it comes to foreign documents. And the final cherry on top with this is our human quality assurance and data cleansing. So when we have instances, and we do see them often, where individuals provide shortened names, so like instead of putting Theodore Jones, they put Ted Jones, that generally speaking, if you're looking at a black and white verification, that will fail. But what we actually have is the processes in place within InstaID Plus to actually add those additional names as aliases, so that we don't just off-ramp them unnecessarily, that we can data cleanse and make the records more thorough and accurate, so those reports are more thorough and accurate, and be able to provide that level of quality assurance over the top. So it is just more than, InstaID is more than just technology here. It is technology coupled with workflow, coupled with customer support, to be able to provide customer service at the forefront. And it's something that we do all of it, right? So at the end of the day, the people using this, so your businesses, for example, if once we get down that track, we'll simply be able to invite, look up what's happening with them. NCC InstaID handles the processing and the journey for you, and the reports come through, which is what you want at the end of the day for your compliance. So what does this all look like? All right, so let's use an example here. So some of you actually may already be familiar with this or have heard of this. This is the land titles ID verification rule set that comes, that stems from the ARNEC participation rules. And as you can see there on the screen, there are 6 categories whereby ID provided varies in what category they go down, okay? So what we've built, and this is what we have the ability to do for many different rule sets, is a diagnostic that actually walks the user through this journey with a series of yes or no questions and identifies the ID that is required to meet a specific rule set based on what ID they provide. So if they provide, for example, a driver's license in the first instance, that the system will actually work out for that rule set what additional documents remain, so that your customers and also the people who are administrating this system in sending out the invites don't need to be experts in what land titles ID verification is. The system will achieve it, and the system will make sure that that user will provide all the information necessary to be completely compliant with one of these categories. Okay, so this is a real example of what we've got currently going now with conveyances in this space that are currently using this primarily for land titles ID verification, right? So what they were doing, these conveyances, is they were either arranging face-to-faces, or alternatively they were arranging Skype calls with these people, but there was no assurity around, one, is the person going to show up on time? So there's an administrative requirement and a cumbersome administrative requirement of making sure that person attends the appointment. And then obviously all the administration going with, okay, this is what I need you to do. Okay, I can't read that. You have to do it again. Oh, I don't know. So once you send it through, it may be still unreadable, that you have to go back, set up another appointment. As you can see, it's a bit more labor intensive. But what we've designed is a system that's able to capture all of that with the administrative workflows around it to ensure at the end of the day, you get a compliant and valid report. So how does the system work? So as mentioned to you, the three premise questions that we're asking is, all right, first one was we need to prove that the individual is real, is live. So we do that with what is called direction-based liveness. So direction-based liveness comes in various sorts. You can have where you ask them to hold up fingers, you can ask them to blink 5 times, smile, turn their heads, etc. What we ask them to do is actually hold their ID, as we've described there, next to their face or near them and in camera shot. So our system works on a browser. So that's either a browser that's connected to your PC, like your webcam, or alternatively, it works on the phone's browser. It's not an app-based, so it's all in a secure browser session, which makes the use of this product quite ubiquitous across many different operating systems, many different phones, and many different versions of those phones. So rather than getting them to download an app and disconnecting them that way, this can all be done in a secure session using the phone's browser or the webcam that's available on their PC or Mac. So in doing this, you can see there we provide clear instructions of what they need to do, and they need to hold up their ID as this lady is doing, along with their face, to capture their selfie. Now, the first layer of technology that we have in this space is proprietary technology from Amazon, whereby essentially what our system does is it tries to identify that there is a face, and tries to identify that there is a ID, and the ID has a face. And if they don't follow those instructions, they actually get an error message saying, we've been unable to identify the face, we've been unable to identify the ID, and they need to do it again. So they need to follow the directions given, the direction-based liveness, to be able to go to the next stage. So they do that, And then we've achieved step one, which is determine that that individual is real. Okay. So what we have also behind the scenes, which is not part of this presentation, but we actually capture the camera's bursts beforehand. So if we see that there is trying to spoofing, so where someone's trying to hold up a picture of it, trying to replicate this, but they're not themselves, we can actually see those bursts happen before. And as part of our verification processes, we'll be able to pick that up and reject it, right? Or off-ramp them if we feel that there's an indication of any fraudulent activity that's happening. Okay, so that's the first phase of capturing a selfie. Then what we go through is a series of yes or no questions. Do you have a passport with you at the moment, right? So they go through that, and then if they click no to that answer, then we offer them the next form of ID that's available in the relevant rule set that's provided. So we'll ask them then for a driver's license. If they click no to that, then we'll ask them for a government issued proof of identity card. If they click no to that, then they'll be given a list saying, listen, as part of this rule set, we need one of these IDs. So you need to select one. And if you can't, you can save it for later if they don't have it, which sends them a resume URL to their email address, or they just go, yeah, no, listen, I need to go forward, so I'm going to provide a passport. So as you can see here, and due to the fact that the robustness of our capture, we can accept both Australian passports or foreign passports, as you indicated there by the Australian flag being ticked and the world flag being ticked, right? So the user simply uses their camera and takes photos of their ID, they get a preview and they submit it. Then they're offered the next ID as part of the rule set. So the most common ID in this instance to meet the Land Titles Office is the driver's license, right? So it'll say, yes, do you have a driver's license? Yes or no. If no, then it would work its way through the rest of the diagnostic with the other IDs available in the other categories of this rule set to determine what's required. So for the example of this one, the individual provides a driver's license, they take a photo of the front, then they take a photo of the back, and then submit it. Then we receive a signature, right? The signature is there so that we can actually go ahead and they're giving us consent to check their ID against the various government data sources that we have available in other systems, and for the purposes of confirming their identity. As you can see, generally speaking, a verification of identity will take no more than 5 minutes to do on the phone or on the webcam. Now, the system is built so that we're accepting all documents in real time. So it won't access their camera roll and it won't access their scan upload. So they actually have to do it in session, which adds the extra robustness around liveness. All right, so once they're all done, they just get a confirmation screen, everything's okay, and then all the magic happens behind the scenes. We'll verify their identity against the data sources. The system will do the biometric facial recognition, and if there are any errors, then essentially they're emailed explaining to them what they've done wrong. So if it's expired, if the documents aren't right, so they uploaded, for example, a student card as a driver's license, we will reject that, and they'll because it doesn't meet the minimum identity requirements of that rule set, and they'll be given a link to fix it, right? So they'll always be given that opportunity to resolve it and remedy it before we actually off-ramp them if necessary. So that's all part of the process. So what comes back at the end of the day? So this is just an example report. You get a PDF report that explains the verification status, the date verified, who verified it internally at NCC, the documents that were provided. You can actually verify all of this online. We have a verification section because there's a code there if you're wanting to verify it. And you get the images and all the information to determine, determine what was successful with this verification. If there was a document that we were unable to verify, there'd be a little cross there saying we've been unable to verify, and then the verification status will be not verified. So they're the two options. It's either verified or not verified. So at the end of the day, this is all you care about, because you're getting a report that explains whether it's been verified or not. You get all the images. Now the images are 1 page per image, so it's very clear, and you can store this report as part of your compliance requirements. Now, Peter, that's pretty much the end of the presentation. I'm hoping that that hasn't been too much information, but what I'll do is I'll stop the show.
Well, actually, no, keep the share screen there going, Martin, because what I'm going to do, leave that there, because I'm going to turn my camera back on. There we go. Yep. And if you remove that screen, the poor hundreds of people around this country that are watching this at the moment are going to see my ugly mug take up their screen. And I know I've got to look at it every morning, and I don't want to inflict that on others. So that'll balance the screen out a little bit for us. So look, Martin, thanks for that. Excellent presentation. There's a lot in that. And, you know, I did mention at the beginning that I used your service to do my security pass for Parliament House in Canberra. And it's an interesting point you make, so I just want to come back to it, is that I had to have this as a certified copy to the securities office within Parliament House. And I thought, this will be interesting. So I sent them the report, as you've just demonstrated you've got, and advised them there is a link here and there's a reference point on the report, so you can verify that this is a legitimate report. It is as being given. It's certified in that manner. And I thought, I wonder if they're going to accept it, because it's not going to have like somebody's signature on it saying, I hereby certify, blah, blah, blah. It's a true and accurate copy. And they did without a question. So I used to go, if it's good enough for the government.
Source. Yeah,
exactly. Good enough for the government, it's good enough for everyone. And of course, you guys are accredited with the National Police Checking Service in Australia. You're also under contract to that service, and in conjunction with the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. These things are done with the highest of security and capabilities of acknowledgement of what you guys do as being what I called earlier as the gold standard. And what I might do, I have got a few questions coming through, as well as the questions we got to start with. So I don't want to delay too much on that, otherwise time is going to get away from us. But one thing I did want to ask, and this one's a question for me, you talk about biometrics. One is, and this is one from a dummy, what is it you're talking about when you say biometrics? And then is that actually required to support any other Australian regulations as well? But what is it you refer to biometrics? Is it physically, this is my face and this is it on my ID, and I'm holding up a coaster here, so it's not me. Is that what it's about, or what does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So biometrics is essentially, biometric facial recognition is doing that. It's comparing the image that you captured in your selfie, right, as part of holding up your ID, to the image captured as part of the documents that you've provided. And it compares that face with that face on your image and provides us with a yes or no answer based on machine learned algorithms that actually do that comparison. So when people talk about biometrics, you've got human biometric verification, which is someone looking at you and looking at the screen and going, yeah, that's right. But we actually have technology that does that and confirms that for us. So we actually rely very little on humans and more on the technology that we have in play to give us that answer.
Yeah, and it must be very, very sensitive and very, I was going to say capable, but it must really pick up the fine detail really well, because when I use the system, I'm sitting where I am now. I've got two windows over there, and you can sort of see on my hand, if there the light comes through, and if the light was wrong, it would just reject it and say, yeah, go try that again, because it didn't work really well. It was able to pick up the fact that the detail was getting interfered with because of a really bright light that was coming through. It's a great system indeed.
See, to your second point, Peter, about where this is being used.
Yes.
We noticed if we look, start with internationally first, the New Zealand government over there across the ditch are now requiring a biometric for their AML compliance now. So they're moving down that way of being able to use a biometric, which is a facial biometric, a biometric facial recognition for their AML. In terms of other services, yeah, we're starting to see it across many verticals. I mean, you have a look now, you can actually, with certain banks, credit cards, you can pay using your selfie. So with your banking app, you can do a selfie and do it. You've seen it for users when they're trying to obtain apps from the App Store or the Play Store, that it actually takes the biometric to let you pass rather than using a password. So it's being used in various different use cases right now. And, you know, like I said, with NCC and the police check vertical, which we know we're very familiar with, is we saw it as a way of linking that person in session with their ID. So we could get a higher level of assurance that there isn't, or reducing the risk of unauthorized or misrepresented access to certain systems to able to get information on a person. Right.
And from a broker's point of view, does the broker really need to be technology? Do they really need to understand it? And is there any support that goes along with how this operates?
No, well, that's the beauty of this system. We've tried to make it as straightforward as possible. I mean, we've been in this business to consumer space for many years. So whilst, the relationship typically with a broker or a conveyancer is business to business, we have the same interest at the end, which is the person using the system. So we've always designed our processes to ensure that the customer, which is a broker's client or a mortgage application, a person who's applying for a mortgage, will be able to do this quickly and easily and not have to worry about, what rule set am I using or what IDs do I have to provide? It's all there for them. So they don't need to worry about it.
Okay. And so I'm going to have to read some of these off screen as they're coming through, if I can keep up with them. If you're digitizing the VOI process, how do you control the unsecured lot where ID documents, etc., are transmitted digitally from one URL location to another? I guess you've got that covered because you capture it off a camera shot on your system. Would that be right? Or
well, there's no transmission to a second URL. It's one secure URL that they're using in session at one time. So you're literally capturing it live.
Right. Yeah, so there's no transmission as such, and you guys have got the security piece nutted. Also, do you save or keep the IDs, and if so, for how long?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We actually, depending on this is actually broken down and offered it as a config as part of which vertical we're playing in. So for police checks, for example, we have a retention requirement of a minimum of 12 months and a maximum of 15 months. We tend to feel that retention requirement is quite reflective across the industries that we're playing in, that we'll maintain it on secure Amazon web servers in Sydney for a minimum of 12 months. But there might be, as this industry evolves and as the regulations evolve in this space, that regulators may actually set retention requirements that we have to abide by. So that's actually a configurable feature. Right.
Now, I know you guys are working through the process with the lenders, and that's a work in process. But I mean, in my mind, I guess potentially somebody could use this for VOI for an application, and then the same document could be used for VOI in the conveyance if it was in the time frame. Would that be right?
Absolutely. So the portability of the verification and being able to streamline processes here where an identification piece needs to be used twice, if we can provide that assurance that that ID has been verified, or even that person has been verified, there would be nothing stopping in using that across multiple transactions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's an interesting point. And again, I spoke about this when we opened, but to me, a lot of this is was going to say evolving technologies. In certain respects, it's not, but the use is evolving because of what's happened through the COVID period. And I see that this becomes, unquestionably the standard going forward. And to me, the risk, the more we do online digitally, if we sit there and go, I'm on Zoom, this is me, this is my ID, take a picture, is fraught with danger from a fraud point of view, and does no real validation of anything, to be honest with you. I know we can use it from time to time now, but I think that's going to be almost instantly, and if not very quickly, draconian and not acceptable.
Well, you know what was really interesting, that Peter, and I'll just use a real life example of how this happened in Canada. I was in Canada, in Montreal, last year, meeting with the Royal Mounted Police over there, and the Canadians moved to that what they call Skype and Verify. So essentially, the exact process that you explained, you Skype and you hold it, and what they found was these fraudsters were actually taking a document and pasting over the top a manipulated document, right? And then holding it, and you can't determine the realness of that document. All you're seeing it as a prima facie, and they realized that this was happening and they had to put a stop to it because it was, you can't determine the authenticity of that document by holding it up to a camera next to your face. It's just impossible. You don't know whether it's been tampered with.
Yeah, and that's going to play straight into here if it hasn't already. I mean, at 6 a.m. this morning, so I'm a bit bleary-eyed today. I was on our International Federation's monthly call, and obviously Canada's a part of that. And we have significant amounts of similarities in how we have evolved and our regulation and the issues that we all deal with. So it's something that it's happening somewhere else. It's going to play out across to here as well. Mate, one of the burning questions is, how much does it cost?
Yep. So just to let you know, we've tried to make this as simple as possible, not only for your customers, but also for your business. So we see that this is an opportunity to give a product that works to the market. The system itself is free. We will be able to set this up free of charge for you to use. And we charge on a transaction basis between $5 and $6 GST inclusive. That is it.
Wow.
And you get the full service, full support, and the reports at the end of it for that price.
Yeah. And I know I've said I've used it and I was really impressed, but I've got somebody else who's just sent me a message saying they recently used it with a client and it works really well. So that's good to hear as well. I've got a question here. Does it integrate with aggregator software? It probably doesn't at the moment. I guess it could. Oh, it does. Well, there you go. Look at that.
Well, it can. It just we have a RESTful, what we call a RESTful API, which is a fancy term for a multifunctional API that you're able to connect with any software, assuming it can be API integrated, and then that software you'll be able to trigger an invite and then receive the results straight into the aggregator software.
Excellent. Oh, there you go. We've already talked about the security of information. I've got a question here. Is fraud a big issue if you can't see the person? I would think so, but is it?
Absolutely it is. We've seen instances just, with our police check side of things, and I'm not speaking out of school because it's something that, we've been on the forefront with, where there are syndicates out there primarily trying to assist people who do not have the relevant documentation, meet certain standards to obtain or move forward into some form of onboarding. And this sophisticated group are very much into document manipulation, particularly photographs, and are charging heavy premiums for that to be able to actually offer it as a business. So they're actually taking on the responsibility of doing the onboarding on behalf of someone, manipulating the relevant documents to get them through. And it's a big problem. I mean, NCC has its own fraud detection solutions in place that look at various factors, such as, country provided, mobile phone number, credit card provided, all this stuff to try and identify these syndicates. But yes, the short answer, and we're dealing with relatively low value transactions in police checks. I guess the value comes in the data or getting them onboarded. But, if you're dealing with high value transactions, that yes, absolutely. We just need to be able to do things better if we can.
Yeah. Mate, I've got a great question here, and I'm going to from Catherine. This is a great question. Is there a chance that this will potentially replace the requirement of needing a justice of the peace to witness ID for the customer during the mortgage process or any other process, I guess? So it's almost do away with justices of the peace in witnessing.
Yeah, hey,
or witnessing ID.
We've got the benefit. Yeah, we've got the benefit of the hindsight. With this is the exact issue that we face with criminal checks, where notarization and certification has become somewhat redundant, and the reason why is because we are taking the certification on face value. There is no verifying of the verifier. So if you Google right now and you go certification stamp, you can actually transcribe that certification stamp on a document, scan it and send it, and it looks riggy-dig.
Seriously?
Yep.
Jeez.
So given the fact that there's no central register of notaries that are available for us to verify them in any real administrative time to do, you know, a real and pragmatic time, that the certification of ID, I feel is less reliable and probably more risky than doing it this way, because we're verifying data at source.
Yeah, so the future, when you say that to me, is instantly, with time, it most likely will replace the fact that you won't get a JP to witness somebody's ID. You just wouldn't do it. I mean, you think of the time drag to do it. I know I've had to do it with things in the past. It's the world's biggest pain in the ass to try and get it done. It takes forever if you get someone to do it. So,
and a lot of the times, you know, they figure out, you know, people who want to get around it can just look at seeing how, you know, a lot of them these days aren't even stamped, these days they just write it on the top and include their JP number or something like that. So the rules have relaxed somewhat. You know, back in the day when you had certified documents, they needed to be certified, stamped, and, you know, people would interrogate it. Now it's like, it looks like it's been certified and move on. So we're just adding some rigor to it and making it all online, which is what it's all about.
Yeah. Mate, another question that's come through is, who pays? Does that cost go to the borrower?
It's a great question, and our system is set up to handle both. So, you know, as part of the transaction, if you want the mortgage applicant or the borrower to front the cost, they'll be asked for a credit card as part of the process. That can be switched on. Alternatively, we have a monthly in arrears bill, listed itemized invoice at the end of the month, which then, you know, can be on charged or, you know, dealt with through your own internal, you know, revenue models. So it's either way, to be honest.
So you got options there. Don't get me wrong, as somebody who's been in business a long time, I love options. I hate somebody telling me you can only do it this way. Give me choice. Martin, that's great. That pretty much brings us to the end of our questions, and unless there's any final points you want to make, is there, Martin, or we're good?
Oh no, just you know, we're going to bring up the screen next about where to find more information. We're more than happy to have demos. We're more than happy to have discovery sessions with your businesses. If you are interested, you might actually think of particular use cases that you say, hey, listen, you know, we really think this would help us. Feel free to reach out. You know, we're happy to do a bit of a show and tell on things and see how we can help your businesses. And really, like I said, the product itself is very much in verticals already that works really, really well, that we see this is an opportunity for FBAA members to get a glimpse into what we're looking at shaping policy for the future, and hopefully in the not too distant future, that we're finding organisations will start to move towards this, as you mentioned, Peter, a gold standard.
Yeah, and of course we've got a group running at the moment, which through the FBAA, which is the early adopter program, and so that is a means to, you know, as well, I guess, for people to be on board and to get into the system. But funny enough, I also had a question: how do we sign up? So we will give you the details on how to sign up and how to reach out. I don't know if we've got a screen that is going to show up shortly with that details, but what will happen is that you'll get an email from us after this session where you'll get your CPD code for an hour CPD, together with contact details and a means of reaching out and to Martin and his team. Oh, I've got one last question I'll sneak in. Mate, as this is analysed in real time, do you think you will notice a lack of fraudulent behaviour?
I don't think we'd notice a lack. I think we will be able to deter fraudulent behaviour, because just by nature of the process, it's very difficult to emulate that sort of process in a way that's going to be fraudulent, primarily because of the multi layers of verification that is going on. We'd hope that this would actually be more of a deterrent, and they would want to go and try and find, like when you break into a house, you don't want to break into a house that has an alarm. You want to break into a house that doesn't have an alarm. So they'll focus their attention elsewhere into non sort of gold standard processes or more traditional processes where they can have a higher probability of getting away with it.
Yeah, we are still getting bombed with a whole heap of questions, but the time's running against us. But I did mention earlier about lenders, but it's still coming up. So at the moment, you're working through with lenders to get them to accept this. I mean, in my head, they should be anyhow. It shouldn't even be a question. But is that right, or have you got lenders already on board?
That's exactly right. We're having discussions with lenders now about really getting their buy-in for this process. And as I mentioned, there are organisations really scrambling, and this is the forefront of their discussions around how we're doing things. And it's an evolving thing. We've got some lenders who are wanting, you still to go get certified copies. Some lenders who are happy for the Skype call and take a screenshot. This is really about making sure that we can get in front of these lenders and getting the dialogue going, which they have already been receptive to. But as mentioned earlier, there is so many different processes, and one lender is different to another, that we're trying to build a level of standardization. So what it may mean is, once lenders start coming on board, I'm pretty confident that they will, that this will actually channel a lot more mortgages through them if it's an easier process and a more robust and less sort of fraudulent process, or less exposure to fraud. So that could mean others will come on quite quickly.
Yeah, mate, I was wrapping up, but I'm getting bombed with a whole other question. I'll try and get these in, and we'll get it sorted for you. What have I got here? It says, what do you do with the info collected? What is your responsibility if the data is stolen?
Oh,
good question.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great question, and I guess the answer is we're covered under the Australian privacy principles like everybody else. So we have to notify there being a data breach if there is a data breach. I mean, as we have been we're accredited by the ACIC. One of the things at their highest forefront is data security. Not only data security, Peter, but also where the data is stored. So NCC has a requirement to store its data in Australia, and we maintain that through Amazon and our government accredited Amazon web servers in Sydney. And we have that obligation. Now, given the fact that we have a portal, like an outward facing portal, so each organization's provided with one, there is levels of security that we can switch on for those people, two-factor authentication, etc., that will secure that. But we are still at a little bit of the mercy of them maintaining their access to their own portals and not having opportunities to get those misused by people.
But given you're an Australian located, Australian operated business with the data stored in Australia, you're subject to Australian privacy laws and all the laws that surround the storage of data. So there's not much more you can do about that. So
it's actually more stringent than most.
Yeah, good luck with that. And the final one was a part of that was what prevents the client from using that info for their own benefit? I'm assuming if that's stolen, well, good luck trying to get it, I guess, but I don't really know the answer to that. I guess it's theft.
I'd be interested in the particular use case of what they're talking about. And like I said, I'm happy always to receive information, or if anyone wants a discussion, that person who asked that question to contact me directly to discuss exactly what they're talking about, so that we can reassure them on those things. But yeah, depending on the use case.
Right. Yeah, okay, excellent. Well, Martin, thank you. Everybody who joined us, thank you. You'll get an email from us with a quick survey on it. If you could do that for us, would be great. And we value your feedback, and also have Martin's contact details for you. So everybody, thanks very much for joining us. It's been very much appreciated. And I hope you enjoyed the discussion around verification of identification and what gold standards need to look like. Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Thanks.